when we start to look at that as it relates to functioning and to aging, lean mass is gold when it comes to health span, lifespan, and quality of life. Men have been screwing it up for a long time, and we need to evolve. We need to take a look at what we're doing. We need to take a look at our clientele, and we need to do a better job of meeting the needs of our female, our wives, our daughters, our mothers, and our grandmothers.
Females are one of the only mammals. There are two other mammals, they are underwater, who go through menopause. So it's not like we couldn't study animals. We couldn't, because no other animals go through that stage of life. So it's very interesting that it's not that we don't have enough human data. We just don't have data at all about women hitting menopause.
For the last 25 years, my biggest fear is that my daughter would struggle with knee injuries the same way I did, my brothers did. Okay, that was every time my daughter steps onto a field or steps onto a practice pitch, that's what goes through my mind. That's what I worry about.
There was this term that they used for describing a patient. You've got a WW in room 10. You know, can you guess what the WW is?
Oh, I don't even want to try. I don't even want to try to lower to myself to that level.
Okay. Welcome back to the 90% Healthy. This is your co-host, Klaudia, and I've got Don on the other line.
Yeah, Don, as long as his head's not up his ass, is going to be here with you today, but he's doing his best to
It's been a rough couple of days, but we'll get our stuff together for this chat, because we're going to be talking about training like a woman. And if we know anything about the health space, we know that women are often treated as small men, and training and exercise physiology is no different. And you know very well, having trained both men and women, that there are changes that need to be looked at, not only because our bodies are different, but because there's higher rates of injury for women in terms of ACL. So we've got some studies that we want to bring on. And all of this is just not bad luck that, women are just unlucky, Do
not accept bad luck as an explanation.
No,
absolutely
it's not bad
And
luck.
I'll tell you one other thing, Klaudia. Of all the athletes I've ever trained, without a doubt, I will take an elite female team any day over a male team. When I coached the women's volleyball team back in the early 90s at Ohio State, these girls, you tell them to run through a wall, they get through the wall, they come back spitting dust, and they ask me, what do I have to do now? And I have these unbelievable relationships with these young women. And even today, now I'm consulting with their kids or the kids they coach. I'll take that elite female athlete any day. Listen, when you're dealing with guys, you got to deal with ego, and it's a pain in the ass. So, so we'll start it off from there.
Yeah. And it's funny that we are going to talk about ACL injury, because I am one woman who had ACL injury. Yeah, I did. I was playing intramural soccer in college freshman year. At 10 o'clock at night, we were just, playing, and there goes Claudia's knee.
Stop, pivot, go.
Yep. So it's very interesting. And I thought, obviously, I blame myself because I literally tripped in my own feet. I'm not a soccer player. I just enjoyed the game. Mm-hmm. So let's start with some of the training fails that occur when it comes to some of the blind spots we have in training women, like how different they are from men.
It starts at the foundation. Okay. So when you go back to look at strength training in athletics, literally we go back into the mid to late 60s. And the former strength coach from Nebraska was a pole vaulter, and he was struggling with injury, and he started lifting weights. And I can back this up even more. When I was in grad school, I had a professor, Dr. Bob Bartels, who was a member of the swim team at Ohio State in the 50s. And the Ohio State swim team had some very successful swimmers in the early 60s, especially in the Tokyo Olympics. And Dr. Bartels used to tell stories about these guys going down to the YMCA. There was not strength and conditioning really in the university. Ohio State hired their first strength coach in 1977, I think. And I started there in 1980. So it's relatively young, but the strength training ethos comes from the powerlifting world, bench press, deadlift, the strongman world, which was completely male dominated, right? That there were some strong females in there, but it was very a male it's been a very male dominated aspect after that. And so males, God, women are so freaking elegant compared to men grunt, or that's how we think, and we grunt. Women are elegant machines, okay, and that's the beauty, and it goes back to cycles and things like that. But my point is that we can't just take what we've been doing not millennial, certainly for decades with, we're up on a millennia coming up, over the decades, and apply it to women. It doesn't apply. And here's the big reason. Again, we're relatively simple animals, equivalent to bears and large cattle. And we have one cycle. We have basically a circadian rhythm, and that's really the only one we have to deal with in men. Women have these elegant hormone cycles that are just, my God, you people, women make humans, okay? You're the creators of the human race. You make humans. We can barely feed ourselves. And when we start to deal with this is the point. This is the opportunity. We don't train. Men think, oh, they train to get strong, lift weights, tear tissue, repair, come back, do it again. It's more elegant than that. We have hormonal signals that we're manipulating. We have nervous system signals that we're manipulating. And if they're not manipulated correctly, you get detraining, you don't get adaptation, you get deadaptation, you get misadaptation. So this is part of the framework that we've got to break. And frankly, I don't think we're doing a great job of it right now. I think that, if first of all, we're not communicating to females how important it is to lay on lean mass. The Alona Mar representation, she's one in a million, but she should be at the top of the pyramid. The fact that she carries so much lean mass, when we start to look at that as it relates to functioning and to aging, it's gold. Lean mass is gold when it comes to health span, lifespan, and quality of life. So, okay, so I'm gonna get off my rant here for a little bit. Yeah, men have been screwing it up for a long time, and we need to evolve. We need to take a look at what we're doing. We need to take a look at our clientele, and we need to do a better job of meeting the needs of our wives, our daughters, our mothers, and our grandmothers.
And you sent me this study that was recently published in the Strength and Conditioning Journal. It was published actually September 3rd, and we're recording this
Yep.
on September 11th. So we're so current, and I am absolutely loving it. And it talks about leveling the playing field and just the key considerations for female endurance athletes across their lifespan. Because I love that studies like this are starting to come out, because we understand, and as you mentioned, that yes, men are simple. They have a couple of hormones that ebb and flow, but pretty consistent in terms of how they flow. In terms of women, very different. It's not only we have our cycle once we hit puberty, but we have different seasons of our lives. Before puberty, cycling years, perimenopause, hitting menopause, postmenopause, things are different, and we need to train differently and focus on different ways of pushing our bodies and allowing it to recover. Can you tell me a little bit about what came to your mind and why you thought this study was so important?
Well, remember, I'm the father of a very athletic daughter. And for the last 25 years, for the last 25 years, my biggest fear is that my daughter would struggle with knee injuries the same way I did, my brothers did. Okay, that was every time my daughter steps onto a field or steps onto a practice pitch, that's what goes through my mind. That's what I worry about. Now, when I dropped my daughter off at Ohio State for her freshman year, she was never stronger than that day for the next 4 years. Okay? And that was because I've watched too many young female athletes who just don't have the background. Now, listen, here's part of it. We had a weight room in our house, and it wasn't in the basement. It was back in our rec room. It was one of the big feature spaces in our house. It was this big 16 by 24 room, and it was decked out. Okay, she grew up in there. I have pictures of her as a child holding these two dumbbells when I'm putting together a power rack. So she grew up in the middle of it. She saw it, and she was not afraid of it, number one. It was an environment that was real to her, and I remember her recruiting video that we sent when she was finishing up high school, trying to get an offer in college. We sent a picture of her deadlifting 400 pounds, trap bar deadlifting 400 pounds. Yeah, she was strong. Where does it come from? Comes from dad, comes from dad's fears. Okay. And now, my kid has a dad who studies this stuff and pays attention to it. And let me back up just a little bit. I go back to 1993. Jim Stone, the women's volleyball coach at Ohio State, and I have this interaction with a piece of technology I had at the time. And he said, I want you to come work with my team. They had no coach, they had no strength coach working with the women's volleyball team. This is 1993. Okay. So I go start to work with the team. We experience a great deal of success. We wound up finishing second in the country. We swept the Big Ten. It was an amazing group of girls. I had 4 All-Americans. I had the NCAA Player of the Year on that team. I had this gal from Alaska, Lisa Whistler. That was down. We would always lift after practice, and I'm out down there at practice one day, shagging balls. They're working on some drills, and she sends this volleyball past my ear. And I swear it sounded like a bullet. I left the floor after that because I was afraid for my life. But these amazing girls. But here's what I know. I lose any one of them and the quality of my team drops. This next man up concept or next woman is bullshit. There are some people that are just, on my wrestling team, I had an Olympic gold medalist. I lose him to injury. I've got a guy that's been a backup heavyweight, not an Olympic gold medalist. So the risk of ACL to females is greater than it is to males. That's what we know. I personally believe any strength and conditioning that you do, and you need to roll recovery into that too, needs to be done with the idea I'm doing this to lower the risk of injury. Jim came to me one time and said, what are we doing to help the girls jump higher? And I said, Jim, the girls don't need to jump higher. What we need to do is we need endurance. I need the girls to jump just as high in their last jump as they did in their first jump. I want to prevent them from degrading. I want them to be there the entire time. So we didn't do a lot of plyometrics. Everybody thinks, you do plyometrics to make you jump higher. And plyometrics will make you jump higher, but if you go crazy with them, you're going to have a 90% injury rate. You got to have just enough. And this is the whole thing about strength and conditioning is that I'm not trying to train bodybuilders or power lifters. I'm trying to train humans to endure the challenge that we expose them to in a manner that they're able to have the resilience to get through it. That's what I'm working for. And you know what? Knock on wood, we had no injuries on that team. 100% of my girls were available for every game. 100% of my starters were available for every practice and every game. I only had some, and we had some girls that came in. I was talking to Jim about this the other day. We've been longtime friends since then. We had this one young lady come in from Chicago, and my God, Klaudia, I'm over at the physicals watching them go through their physical assessment. She was a mess. Okay. And the typical high school athlete, especially the elite high school athlete, is juggling a high school season with a club season and arguably 2 club seasons. Okay. So this kid had not had a down period for 4 years, and we're getting ready to bring her into a Big Ten meat grinder. I'm like, oh no, we're not doing anything ballistic with her. We are going to do everything we can to make sure she can practice every day. And we really didn't have the recovery concepts back in the early 90s. We weren't really thinking about that way. I don't remember looking at HRV. God, it must have been the mid 2000s when I first started to understand concepts. And, Polar had a product that came out and they were using HRV in some of their products, but we really weren't thinking about recovery. But anyone who had the idea, I need 100% of my players here for practice. And at the end of the day, Klaudia, I need you to be able to show up and do Klaudia things every day. And I don't need you worrying about, oh my God, your social media the other day with your roller skating down by the ocean was awesome. I need Klaudia doing that. Okay. Um, so I guess let me try and pull back out of this rabbit hole that I'm on.
Hmm.
I am particularly attuned to articles like we saw come out in Journal of Strength and Conditioning. I am particularly concerned that the industry still doesn't quite get it. It's still dominated by men. Okay, that, like I said, we grunt and we have one hormone, and that's, unfortunately, that's the challenge in our world, in our biohacking world, in our early adopter biohacking world. We're starting to see some great female education models
Yes.
emerge, but unfortunately, it's not in the general public yet.
Because people aren't paying enough attention. Well, maybe I shouldn't generalize, but I'm going to just say it this way for the sake of this
Sure.
episode. They're not really paying attention estrogen. I mean, there are anatomical chain differences in women, there are biomechanical differences in women's bodies, but one key hormone that is not paid attention enough and often is talked about in a context, especially in an aging population of women, estrogen, is not a great thing to have a lot of. But when you go through your seasons of life as a woman. Obviously, estrogen begins to rise when you're getting into puberty, and then it's highest during your reproductive years, and it's starting to drop in perimenopause and nearly completely disappear through menopause. Estrogen is such an important hormone. Like, it plays a role
Sure.
in so many different things, including joint flexibility. And I've been listening to some podcasts, and they talk about how there is a very relevant number of women who deal with frozen shoulder in menopause. And that is because of the drop in estrogen, because the flexibility of the joint is decreasing because of there's no estrogen. So
Right.
it's very important as you're an individual, a woman who's cycling like me, understanding how your estrogen ebbs and flows throughout your cycle. As you know, it peaks at ovulation. So that's why we say push hard, train hard during that 14, 15-day range. And then it kind of dips a little bit, and there's a little rise again in the luteal, but then it really is the lowest throughout your bleeding days,
Hmm.
the first couple days of your cycle. And it's interesting how I could find a study, but I haven't looked in a while. I had some conversations years ago with a friend of mine, and he told me that he saw a study that it's very common that women, when they tear an ACL, it is during the time of their cycle, of their bleeding days.
You know,
And that
the
could
the
be
ace.
because estrogen is really low and their joint flexibility
Well, your
is
anterior
low.
cruciate ligament has estrogen receptors on it. Okay.
Exactly. So exactly. Yeah. Joints has, yes, they have estrogen receptors. Yes. Thank you for adding
So
that. Yes.
now there's so many factors that go into this idea, and I think, again, I said it when we started, women are elegant machines, or elegant beings. um I was looking at my HRV data this morning, and you and I talked about this a little bit before we came on the air, and I was talking about this emergence of AI and what it's doing for us. And I was looking at my HRV data this morning, and I go, it is going to be interesting to watch the learning that comes as more of this data becomes relevant, and we can really machine grab a lot of this stuff going on. We have these millions of people who are using wearable data that we can aggregate together to learn from. We don't need a study of a bunch of 20-year-old college kids, because that's where you get your PhDs at. You're in college, you have to do a study, you got to write a thesis. So you wind up doing studies of 20-year-old college kids because that's what's available to you.
And men, college guys too,
Yeah, exactly.
very frequently.
So, but I believe there's a lot more to learn, because there's a couple things happening. Number one, wearable technology is opening up new awarenesses. We see it with CGMs, and we now start to see continuous, I believe relatively soon, we'll see continuous insulin monitors. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to see continuous sex hormone monitors, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, the whole lot. And when we start to when we start to acquire that data, because ultimately, when we're measuring hormones, we're measuring at a point in time. Okay. If you're having a hormone study done, they use the test that they use for this is called a Dutch test. It's one of the best ones out there. And you go get a Dutch test done, and depending on where you're at in your cycle as a female, they can estimate the other hormones through the rest of your cycle. But that's an estimation, okay? It's not a measurement. And I think we're going to learn more. Then we throw stress in, we throw trauma in, we throw all these other things in, because remember, trauma is affecting the brain. It's coming down to the hippocampus, which is also communicating with the hypothalamus, which is going to regulate you. With stress, we have all this cortisol dumping. The body doesn't want to be both anabolic and catabolic at the same time. So it's going to choose catabolism over anabolism, because catabolism keeps you alive. Okay.
Yeah.
Anabolism helps you build. So if you're under a lot of stress, you're dumping this cortisol, it's blocking your testo. Okay. That's a problem, let alone what it's doing to the estrogen and progesterone too. So this is a very complex, but I believe we are on the verge of having the ability to truly understand it. Right now, what we need to do is we need professionals to take a step back and say, who is my audience? Who am I training for here? I'll tell you a funny story. I was at a conference, God, it must have been 30, it could have been 30 years ago. And I'm sitting there with the strength coach from the University of Kentucky. And this is back when Kentucky was in their heyday. Okay. They were national champions, regular national. Okay. And we were talking about the fact sleep was just emerging as a key performance indicator in this community. Are our guys sleeping? And he said, yeah, he says, I've got guys walking in my weight room at 6 o'clock in the morning that just got in at 2 o'clock and they expect me to train them. And I go, why do you train them then? He says, because that's what they pay me to do. And I said, oh, maybe we need to pay attention to that. And that was 30 years ago, right? We're starting to build the awareness. We're starting to see this. And again, we now have wearable technology. We run into a problem in college athletics about how much coaches can know about students' behaviors away from the game, which is fair. I don't have a problem with that. But I think it's on us as professionals to educate these humans as to, you want to be a great athlete, you want to get the most out of this, let me help you figure this out. And I think that's where it goes back to, that as professionals and as influencers and as people who are at the front of the curve, I would never suggest to the coach of female athletes that you change your practice. Your practice is based on your goals. Okay. That's what you set your practices on. I have a goal of winning this game on this date. I have a goal of getting to this tournament on this date, and I've got to back all my training up from that. Now, I'm not suggesting that you base your practices that day on the menstrual cycles of your athletes. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is you might want to pay attention to it, and you might want to adopt a thought process, or again, I'll use the term ethos of, I don't need the strongest athlete in the world. I need an athlete that is strong enough.
Mhm.
Okay. I need to do these things so they're strong enough. And I can change my out of practice behaviors based on some of those factors. But if I got a team of 40 girls, I got 40 different cycles I got to pay attention to. Does that mean I have 40 kids on 40 different programs? Maybe not, but you know what? With technology, we might be starting to get there. We might start being able to think about that. You present that problem to an NCAA administrator right now, and they shit their pants. They're like,
No.
oh, fuck, I can't do that.
No.
Well, I think we have to start thinking. I used to say a
And
decade out. If this may be coming in the next 2 years, the way things are accelerating so fast.
And I love it that you mentioned that you don't need to completely change the program because the person just started their cycle today.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to do a complete 180, but I think it calls for a little bit more awareness around, maybe I should take more time to warm up today. Maybe I should take more time to stretch or take some breaks or more time in recovery when I get home. So it doesn't necessarily mean you still can't, like, you don't have to, like, I got my period, I need to lay in bed. Unless you're
No.
like in excruciating pain. But like, seriously, you don't need to change everything. Like, it's not like I'm not training because I'm bleeding. It's like I am going to maximize my training through supportive exercises and warm-ups or cool downs that allow me to be safe and prevent injury.
And we're just starting to see this. No, you're absolutely right. Just because you're menstruating and you're dealing with the byproducts of that, first of all, if you're in a situation where you're menstruating and it's painful and debilitating, maybe our team docs need to become more hormone aware.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe they need to go up and see Amy Killen up in Salt Lake City, and Dr. Amy Killen, because I think she's one of the best in the country right now when it
She is
comes to
working on
informing.
a book, and I'm so excited.
She's a rock star. I mean, she does a great job. And let's help these young ladies figure out, oh, do I have a test? Listen, if you're an athlete, you probably have a higher testosterone level. Okay. Testosterone predicts the winner of a chess tournament. Okay. The change in testosterone level. It is a powerful hormone, but when it's integrated in that normal cycle, it can be problematic. And the question is what do we need to do to resolve this situation? I'll tell you, I don't want to piss a bunch of docs off right now, but what the hell, here we go. There's a lot of docs that don't have a fucking clue as to the whole hormonal pathway. They just don't.
Yeah, they don't get trained on it.
They don't get trained on it. And we now have, like I said, we've got this really cool company called Dutch Test that their product, the output of their product is educationally phenomenal. It is just, but you have to have the desire. You have to want to do it. Okay. And so whether you're the team doctor or the personal trainer or the strength coach or the athletic trainer, you've got to want to understand this person in front of you and realize they don't have testicles and it is complex, and you've got to be worth your shit and get on top of this and figure it out.
Okay, I'm going to tell you something that I just heard
Trying
the
not to
other
rant
day.
too much, but failing at that.
And just so we can rant some more, because I was listening to a podcast, and this Dr. woman, I can't remember her name, which one I was listening to. I listened to a few. And she was talking about how back in the day when she was doing her rounds as an intern,
Mm-hmm.
there was this term that they used for describing a patient. You've got in room 10. Can you guess what the WW for?
I don't even want to try. I don't even want to try to lower to myself to that level.
Okay. It's whiny woman. So sad. Like it's generally was about a patient who came in who was menopausal or had some type of, menopausal symptoms. And it's just so sad. And since then it's been changed. But it's like, what the heck? Like seriously, then they were talking about how, yeah, it was probably a group of guys having beer on a Friday night decided we're gonna name this WW. And I'm like, seriously? So yeah.
No.
Definitely.
And you know what? My doctor, I've talked to him, Dr. Eric Serrano down in Pickerington, Ohio. His rooms, when you go into his rooms, first of all, it's full of superheroes. He's a Marvel guy, so he's got and he's always wearing a superhero t-shirt.
I probably like him.
Which is funny. The other thing, in every one of his rooms, he has a barbell. He has a freaking barbell in every one of his rooms, or a kettlebell or something, because he's constantly rubber bands. But he has these metabolic charts on all the walls. And I walk in and I see him. I'm like, man, that is really cool. And it is not A plus B. Okay. It is A to the 10th. Okay. It is so complex. And listen, as a professional, I don't even know what to call myself, whether I'm a sport professional or medical professional or a health professional. As someone who is a human professional, human performance professional, I guess, I look at that and I want to understand that better. And maybe the title of this episode should be something about professionals get your shit together or something. But I hope I go to Eric because I know he thinks in these terms. Okay. I go to one of my other favorite people in the world is Dr. Elizabeth Yurth out at the Boulder Longevity Institute. She is brilliant, just brilliant, and understanding metabolism at a level far beyond the other professionals. That's why she's the lead lecturer at the Peptide World Conference and things like that. She's outstanding. Amy Killen up in Salt Lake City. There are individuals out there that are absolute alphas. Then there's a lot of people that just think they're special. And
Oh,
again, if this is your doctor, if you demand this kind of information, or if you go ahead and self-inform, you'll eventually move towards these kinds of people. This
yeah.
is what's so critical. You know what? I don't listen. I watch cable TV, and you can't watch cable TV for 30 minutes without a testosterone ad coming on. Okay.
Yeah.
If they figured out that remote controls cause testicular cancer, there would be billions of dollars spent on that research. Okay.
That's right.
Because, that's just the man thing. But that person sitting next to you, that elegant being sitting next to you, deserves the attention too. We deserve to understand metabolism. We deserve to understand the hormonal role in humans. And oh, by the way, the better what you understand it in a female, you'll be able to apply it to a male too. So don't kid yourself. It's not another creature. It's just a creature with a different form factor.
Yeah. And I wanted to shift gears a little bit to, I mean, we talked a lot about what the problem is in today's female training environments. I want to talk about how we can try to shift this. Like, I want to talk about this female training formula that would be ideal for women across different seasons of life. I put down 3 things, and I wonder if you can talk a little bit to each of those.
Sure.
To build a foundation would be like to have strength, mobility, and neuromuscular control. So teaching your body to move safely under fatigue. What are some of the aspects that we need to focus on? And are these 3 even correct? Am I missing something? Strength, mobility, and neuromuscular control.
Well, those are all key elements. I actually just wrote a little book. It's called The Complete Athlete: The Guide to Peak Performance. And I work from a thing called the athletic performance triangle. A triangle, and this model is over 30 years old. So the triangle, one side of the triangle is physical, the other side of the triangle is psychological, and the bottom of the triangle is skills. This is important. Now, on the physical side, the foundational part of the physical side is movement. Do I move correctly? Do all my joints move in all the directions without pain? Does my top move with my bottom? Does my right move with my left? Does my front move with my back? These are all fundamental things. Now, one of the cool things right now, Claudia, is that AI-driven apps on cell phones with cameras are
Hmm.
getting really interesting on their ability to diagnose movement problems. Now, in the old days, does it hurt? No. Okay, let's go. Okay. Then we saw the addition of what's called the functional movement screen,
Hmm.
FMS, which is a really cool model. It does a great job. I've used it a ton. It is outstanding. When you use FMS to identify poor movement patterns, and you fix those movement patterns, you lower injury. Well,
That's exciting.
now we can do it on your freaking cell phone. Okay. You just have to want to. And as a consumer, I think consumers are going to drive this, Claudia. Consumers are going to, if you're a consumer, you decide you want to move better, you decide you want to be more fit, you go to your local health club, maybe you engage a personal trainer there, which I recommend, a good personal trainer. Well, if that personal trainer staff does not have a handle on this, someone will. So if you are an exercise professional out there and you're out there working, you're grinding every day trying to get through these clients, you're trying to figure out how to separate yourself, specialize, develop a knowledge base, figure out these tools. So let me go back to your original question. Your ability to move is neuromuscular. Okay, you can't separate the two. It's not one or the other. They go
Hmm.
they go together. So movement patterns first. Second, we add strength to good movement. As we add strength to good movement, we get functionally stronger, and it benefits us throughout. We want to be not only be stronger, but we want to carry lean mass as long as we can. I am benefiting from at 63 years old. I am benefiting greatly right now from roughly 2 decades of ridiculously hard work to lay lean mass down. Okay.
Yeah.
When I walked out of Ohio State, I'm walking out about 295 pounds, about 18% body fat. I was carrying around some lean mass.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's been relatively easy to hold on to a great deal. I don't have what I did back then, but I'm holding on to it. I went back to my 45th high school reunion not long ago, And my classmates are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "This isn't about what I'm doing. This is about what I've done."
Yes.
Okay, which is so much more about that. So if you're in that middle phase that we discussed, okay, post puberty, pre-menopausal, and fact is you ought to be doing this clear through regardless of your hormone cycle. You should be lifting. Okay. We should be glorifying Lona Mar. Okay. She fact is we should be looking who's the actor that just did the jeans commercial for American Eagle that everyone's, do you know what I'm talking about?
I am not fluent in Hollywood. I
It'll
just,
come to me, it'll come to me here in a minute. But we should be glorifying muscle, not boobs. Okay. This is the thing. Right now, we glorify these skinny silhouettes with these great, listen, and I'm not arguing about curves. I like curves, don't get me wrong. Okay. But we ought to be looking for lean mass. Again, I look at Alona Mar should be on a pedestal. And you know what? They're doing a pretty good job with her. They've got her in the Sports Illustrated swimsuit model and these kinds of things. She did Dancing with the Stars. I think what she's doing is outstanding. I don't know if you ever watch
yeah.
her play rugby, but she plays rugby with this heavy red lipstick on, which is so
Mm.
cool. But yeah, we need to lean mass is money in the bank.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely strong over skinny will beat everything
Yes. And
as we
and
age.
and we've now, where this skinny culture comes from, and very debatable,
This
and
is
it could
debate.
we could really, but back, in 200 years ago, we kind of glorified bigger curves. Okay. It's only recently that we've got, heroin chic was a term we used back in the early 200s, 2000s.
Oh,
The models were so emaciated and they were actually shooting commercials that looked like these girls were sitting on a toilet shooting up. That's what the industry was considering beauty.
yeah.
And so
I think it's changing though. I think
I
there
do
is,
too.
yeah, I think there's definitely a trend and rise in women training, especially starting, even if they haven't been training as athletes, just starting to train in their late 20s, 30s,
Yeah.
and then mid 30s just to prepare for the time when it's going to be really difficult to maintain not only muscle mass, but to maintain bone density as
Yep.
they're entering perimenopause, menopause, as our estrogen and all of our hormones just start to take a freaking nosedive.
Credit
So,
CrossFit, credit
mm,
CrossFit, a lot of
yeah.
credit to them. They've done a nice job of glorifying the very muscular female, mainly because they do it through competition, but they've done a great job.
Yes, they did. And yes, but I have a problem with CrossFit. I worry that they don't pay a lot of attention to that joint mobility. There's a lot of jerking movements, and I
Yeah,
worry that it's not great for our joints. It cannot be good long term for our joints.
trust me. I have a lot of issues with CrossFit. Okay.
Okay,
There's a
I was
lot
like,
of things that go on there. So there's a lot of targets we can shoot at there, but trying to give flowers on an occasion instead of
yes,
always throwing salt at something. Their ability to glorify the female athlete and what they do.
yeah,
Rogue does a good job of this. I'll tell you who does not, Lululemon. I think Lululemon is doing a really good job of this commercially. Of if you go into a Lululemon store, you don't just see this bone skinny model in their clothes. You
yeah,
see
they're
good
pretty,
fit
yeah, lean muscle.
muscular females.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's part of the thing. But let's go back to our thesis. If you want to age well, if you want improved health span, lifespan, lean mass is literally the ticket.
It's
Okay.
critical.
It is literally the ticket. Now, and then but this thesis sub statement, don't accept what we do with men as acceptable programming for what you're doing, whether you're a female athlete, the athlete, the mother, the grandmother, the sister. Don't accept that. Find someone who is expert in training female needs. And we need the industry to shift that way.
I totally agree. And also, I wanted to, you and I love metrics. So
Yeah.
I have on my little outline sheet a little area to talk about thinking beyond the mirror, especially as women. We are so stuck to looking at the mirror and also the scale, which we've talked about in the
Oh,
past. Just don't worry about the scale. There's a lot more important
No, the
metrics
scale
to
should be
look at.
going up when it's working. The scale should be going
Right.
up.
So I want to talk about metrics that matter, performance indicators, and a long-term vision.
Yeah.
So give me your rundown on best ways to measure bone density, balance, and functional movement. Let's start with that. Metrics that matter, those
So
three.
let's go back
Perhaps HRV.
nearly 20 years, 25 years. My daughter was born. She had grown to the point that I was having to make choices. Do I go to an event at her school or do I go on a business trip? And I did not want to be that dad that was not there for it. I was there.
Mm,
My biggest responsibility as a human on this earth is first to take care of my daughter, second to support her mother. Okay, those are my responsibilities. Now, I was forced early on. She was probably 5 or 6. No, she was probably 7 years old. So I think it was second grade. And she had an event at school, and I was scheduled to make a business trip up to Wisconsin. It was to
mhm,
go visit a group of schools up there to talk about a product that Polar had. And I called the teachers there. And luckily, I was working with teachers. Okay. Because if I was working with non teacher populations, it probably wouldn't have gone as well. But I said, listen, my daughter has this event. If I come up, I'm going to miss it. And they're like, you can't do that. And I said,
mhm,
I have an idea. And literally, I did a webinar for the first time. I said, I believe I can communicate everything that we need to communicate to your staff via this webinar. If we don't do it, I'll be there the next week and I will spend a week at the school if I need to communicate to the right people. And they said, that's great. Well, we did the webinar and I closed the deal that day. It worked.
Nice.
And so now, then the Klaudia, I think I was on a plane 50 weeks the year before that. 50 weeks of the year. I was flying all over this country. And I did not want to be that dad when my daughter became 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
There were great benefits that came from it, financially, vacations, things like that. But I want to spend time with my family.
That's good.
Um, so I left that job. And I opened a little fitness facility in Granville, this town that we lived in. It was called Lemonade Neighborhood Fitness. Um, Now, what was unique about Lemonade was every piece of equipment in that facility plugged into a computer. And when you walked in, I handed you this USB key that you plugged in the machine, and there were these two screens in front of you. The first one says, "Hello, Claudia," and the machine did the workout that I programmed for you that day. So you didn't have to think about how hard do I go, what do I do? You put a heart rate transmitter strap on and it tracked you. Do you know how many mirrors there were in that facility? None. I refuse to put mirrors in a training facility. If I need to communicate to you a movement problem, I will take out my phone, I will video you, I
Mm.
will show you the video in real time because you shouldn't be looking at the damn mirror when you're working out anyway.
Yeah, I
Okay?
was gonna say, I mean, it sometimes helps to see form to an extent. No?
No. Okay?
No? Is it
I
ego?
want you
Just it's my
focusing.
ego, isn't it?
Well, no, I don't know what it is, but if you're squatting, I don't want your eyes looking at your
Yeah,
eyes in
you're
the mirror.
right.
I want your eyes up above that. I want your head up.
Yeah,
I want someone communicating. I want you to
yeah.
feel the movement. And now dancing, I see mirrors for
Yeah.
dancing. I get it.
We need, yeah.
Okay. And I think there's times and it's appropriate, but I'll tell you, most fitness facilities have too many mirrors and it's a distraction because I guarantee you what we do to females in our society, we basically train you to look in the mirror and not like what you see. I am not going to contribute to that.
I
Um,
love that.
I'm going to take the damn mirrors out and we are going to communicate. We are going to use tools and we're going to help you be a stronger, more fit, healthier version of yourself. And what you see in the mirror doesn't have shit to do with that. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so we'll
Okay,
go.
so
So
no
metrics that
mirror.
matter,
Yes,
metrics that
let's
matter.
talk about bone density. How do we look at it? How frequently do we
You
look
go
at
get a
it?
DEXA scan. Okay. I love DEXA. Okay. Because it tells you two things. The two things it tells you is what your bone density is and what your lean mass is. It tells you what your fat mass is too, but I really don't care about that. I know with the process will lower that, but I want bone density going up and I want lean mass going up
Mm,
because that translates to health span dramatically.
Yeah.
Okay. My mother was the strongest woman you ever met in your life, Claudia. She was just a beast and very attractive. But I'll tell you, when my brother must have been after his freshman year at Ohio State, that means I was a senior in high school. We're walking back out of the field. We'd been done doing something with the cows, and my brother said something dumb to my mother, pissed her off. She turned on him and hit him with a right cross and knocked him out. He was laying there on the ground with his head in a cow patty. And I'm like, probably don't want to do that. That would be a mistake. Don't do that. My mother was a beast and she made it. She lived until 83 years old, died of cancer. My father passed away 20 years ago in December. She was diagnosed with breast cancer in February. She has this double mastectomy. We go into the hospital to see her. And if you've ever seen the beds in hospitals when you've had a mastectomy, they've got the rail over and they got a thing that you can pull yourself up. My mother was swinging from that thing like a freaking gorilla. I mean, she was
That's funny.
strong. Okay. And she lived a good life. Cancer took about 6 months of her life. She had to deal with cancer, but it was never painful. But the reason I'm on this tangent is she had a DEXA scan and she was 9 standard deviations to the right of the mean on bone density.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
That's the value of work.
Yeah.
And she worked, my mom worked hard. She was a nurse and we had the farm. And again, she was just a beast. So bone density is important. Lean mass is important. You should be looking at both of those.
Okay.
Okay, I'm trying to get back off my tangent so you can ask some more good questions that I'll then
Yes.
rant
So,
on.
and other things I want to look at is performance indicators, like how individuals need to look at their energy levels, their sleep quality, and their recovery speed. I think those are
Sure.
important for women to really get a handle on where I'm at and how much I can push today.
Jessica Corbin that we had on the podcast, 6
Yeah.
episodes ago, I thought she framed this beautifully. And when you're looking at HRV to make the decision, I believe I'm seeing it pop up on our reels where I'm saying, people wake up in the morning, they look at their number and they decide what they're going to do that day, which is a little contrary to what we're saying right now. And I don't want to have mixed messages here. Listen, if you wake up in the morning and your HRV is in the tank, you need to think recovery. Okay, you need to think. And if you look at that too and say, "Oh, I had a really shitty night's sleep," that we talked about this with Molly Eastman and 1 or 2 podcasts ago,
Mm-hmm.
um, start to get on top of that because work without recovery is valueless. It leads to maladaptation. And there's no doubt that my wife carries stress differently than I do. And I don't know if that's a genetic thing. I don't know if I don't know where that comes from, but it's certainly different. And Jessica, their product at source.io, I think does a really interesting job of saying, hey, maybe you can push today. I forget what their bottom metric was. Can you remember what that was? It was basically recover. Take a breath,
Yeah.
recover. Because when it's in the tank, you're just not as good. And if you have a bunch of in the tank days and you're not doing something to correct it, it's not going to get better. You've got to make an affirmative, intentional movement, intentional recovery. My good friend, Dr. Ron Garbo, talks about this intentional recovery, sitting back, looking, and not just getting through the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the challenge.
Yeah. Especially for
Laura's
women.
Laura's got a job right now that's pretty physical she's working at. And you know what? When I pick her up from work, my mind is straight up thinking about recovery. If we have
Yes.
time, if she's not working late afternoons, getting home at 9 o'clock, we're usually coming home, getting her in the compression gear, trying to do the lymphatic massage, getting her in the sauna, doing the vagal nerve stimulation. And frankly, she's had a lot of success. She's doing really good with it. So can you hear the
That's awesome.
lawnmower that's running outside?
I was wondering, is it going to be outside my place or is it outside your place? Okay,
No,
so
it's
it's outside
outside
your
my
place.
place right now.
Okay.
Is it bad?
No, it's fine. No big deal.
So going back and looking at those metrics like bone density, functional movement, on your list, you have the word balance. And I love the word. I heard a definition one time and the lawnmower must be right underneath me right now. But balance is your ability to fall any way you want.
I
Okay.
absolutely love how you explained it. I've never had
And
anybody say that way. It's so
I
true.
think if you're trying to develop balance, this is neuromuscular. It's not static. Can I stay here? No, it's the ability to move. And you know what? I've had a couple incidents in the last couple years where I've fallen hard, really hard. Lived through it. The second one, I was coming out of our rig. We were in northern Montana in January. So you can imagine the weather. Jackson, our dog, I'm taking out for a walk. I hit the top stair of our rig and my feet go
Oh,
out from under
yeah.
me. And I came down and landed on my elbow. And I'm sure I tore the labrum in my shoulder. I'm sure I did. For the next week, I could not pick my arm up at all. I'm driving. I had to pick my hand up to put it on the steering wheel with my other hand.
That's
Um,
crazy.
so and I said to my wife, she goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "Well," I said, "I'm hurting." I said, "But if I didn't have these wrestler shoulders,
Yeah.
we'd be going to the hospital."
That's
Um,
wild.
so the
Yeah.
ability to endure life is so much that, and that's what comes out with things like balance. And again, I'm going to go back to what we talked about from the
Yeah.
beginning: is lean mass is gold.
Yeah. And I love that we go through this because we're not just talking about women who are training for athletic feats, but
No,
it's for women like I am or like my mom who are training for life and like in your instance how you always talk about training for life events. And all of these play a huge role, the balance, the functional movement, the lean mass, the bone density, these all help you live life with more vitality and
absolutely.
agility as
This
you
is
age.
this is one of the things I love about Dr. Peter Attia's work. He talks about you should train for your last decade of life. What do you want your last decade to look like? Do you want to be in a hospital? Do you want to be in a home? Or do you want to own? My mother did a great job of owning the last decade of her life. She lived independently for the most part right up into her last year. She moved in with Laura and Jacqueline and I for the last 6 months when she did hospice with us, which
Yeah.
which don't get, I'm not.
That's
It was a blessing, but it was the hardest fucking thing I ever did in my life.
gosh.
It was rough, but I wouldn't trade it for anything because I'm pretty sure I was a pain in the ass too in the first 6 months
Yeah.
of my life, or maybe the first 16 years.
Depending who you ask.
There, yeah.
I wanted to, before we close, we're coming to the close, but I wanted to say one more thing that will probably blow people's minds, especially in terms of how there's not much data on women, especially when they hit menopause. Women, human females, are one of the only mammals. There are two other mammals, they are underwater, who go through menopause.
Mm,
So it's not like we couldn't study animals. We couldn't because no other animals go through that stage of life that female humans do. I mean, and there are not many studies with some type of whale and whatnot. So it's very interesting that it's not that we don't have enough human data. We just don't have data at all about women hitting menopause
and we
and
just
postmenopause.
you just have to want to do it. Okay.
Exactly.
Listen, RFK Jr., you want to make America healthy, better, more healthy again? Bring back the Women Health Initiative that you just cut. Okay, jackass. Bring this back. Make this part of what let's value the 51% of the population that is so elegant. Let's value this because what we will learn from this will benefit the caveman too.
Yeah.
Okay, it goes both ways.
Yeah, so it's crazy. And that's primarily because technically we weren't supposed to live this long because women are living now so long. We're living a third of our lives in postmenopause.
Right.
So it's such and a lot of women, it's a lot of struggle. And Medicaid doesn't cover it. Like menopausal visits are not a thing.
Right.
So it's got to change, and I'm hoping to see that change coming soon. Anyways, before we go down another tangent, I wanted to wrap this up so we can let our listeners go with some few snippets that they can take action on. And I just want to reiterate what you talked about: the balance, the functional movement, the neuromuscular training, things that are allowing you to train for next decade.
I don't think there is one thing that could be more valuable to a premenopausal woman than to go to your doctor and get a Dutch test. Okay. Go get
Yeah, I
this.
gotta
And
check it out.
I've got no interest in Dutch and what they do. But if you have a profile of your hormones premenopausal, when you go through menopausal, your doctor then has a roadmap for correcting your hormones postmenopausally. Okay. Most women don't have this. I think this is the number
So
one
true.
recommendation you can do.
So
Number
true.
two, get a DEXA scan. Okay. Go level set on what your bone density is, what your lean mass is. It's going to talk about body fat percentage too. I don't want you worrying about that. I want you worrying about building bone density and building lean mass. Body comp will take care of itself. I don't think there's two things. Then engage in the process. Hire a professional to work with to dial in your programming so that when you are postmenopausal and you do want to go hiking with your grandchildren in Sedona, you're able to do that. You're able to go out there and walk them into the ground. I think there's nothing better than a great grandma, okay,
Yeah.
that's just a beast. And if you do those two things, you can start to set the platform. The lawnmower just shut off and the dog's talking now, so that's what's going on.
Uh,
That's what happens when you have these high-tech recording studios.
yes.
So yeah, it's set that goal out there, what you want that third to be. Be a
Yeah.
beast. Be an Alona Mar in postmenopausal, so that you're kicking ass and taking names.
Indeed. And share your story with us. We love hearing when you have some type of story, whether you've taken a Dutch test before and it's changed the course of how you train or do different things around your vitality, and see what else we can talk about. Send us some questions and more topics and all the things, and subscribe and comment. And we love hearing from you, and reach out to us on
Yeah,
LinkedIn or on our
and we've
websites.
got an episode coming up with a beast, Tara Garrison. I'm really excited to have her on the podcast. So we're getting ready to get her scheduled in. I think Tara will have some great feedback
That'll be
here. Maybe
great.
we need to get her a copy of this so that she can weigh in on this, because I think we can
Yes,
probably extend the conversation some.
indeed. Thanks,
Thanks.
Don.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you.
See
Have a
you
great
soon.
week.
Have
Bye
a
bye.
great week.